We begin with the story back in the Torah. This week's Parsha speaks about Miriam. Miriam was the sister of Moses, and she said something negative about her brother, and with that she was stricken with Torah, which we don't think exists today, but the thing that we think is most common is the skin disease called leprosy. Let's begin with text 1. I will read text 1a. Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses regarding the Cushite woman he had married, for he had married a Cushite woman. They said, "Has God spoken only to Moses? Hasn't he spoken to us too?" And God heard. Now, this man Moses was exceedingly humble, more so than any person on the face of the earth. God suddenly said to Moshe and Aaron and to Miriam, "Go out, all three of you, to the tent of meeting." And all three went out. God descended in a pillar of cloud and stood at the entrance of the tent. He called to Aaron and to Miriam, and they both went out. He said, "Please listen to my words. If there be prophets among you, I, God, will make myself known to him in a vision. I will speak to him in a dream. Not so is my servant Moses. He is faithful throughout my house. With him I speak mouth to mouth in a vision and not in riddles. And he beholds the image of God. So why were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses?" The anger of God flared against them, and he left. The cloud departed from above the tent, and behold, Miriam was afflicted with Torah, as white as snow. Then Aaron turned to Miriam, and behold, she was afflicted with Torah. So after Hashem heard the conversation that Miriam spoke about Moshe, Hashem gathered Moshe, Miriam and Aaron and said, "Why is it that you're treating Moshe like a regular prophet? He's not a regular prophet. He's beyond that of a regular prophet." And Hashem left, and Miriam was stricken with Torah. What did Miriam say about Moshe? What did she say? Text 1b, go ahead, Ed. Elliot, you have the book start, and then we'll pass it along. Text 1b.
Okay, what did they say? Has God spoken only to Moses? Meaning, did God speak only to Moses so that he had to separate from his wife? Hasn't he spoken to us too? He spoke with us as well, yet we did not refrain from marital relations. How did Miriam know that Moses had separated from his wife? Rabbi Nathan says Miriam was beside Zipporah when Moses was told that Eldad and Medad were prophesying in the camp. When Zipporah heard this, she said, "Woe to their wives if they are required to prophesy, for they will separate from their wives, just as my husband separated from me." From this, Miriam knew about it and told Aaron.
I'll recap. Can you get the lights?
Oh, yeah.
So, Eldad and these standing notes. Thanks. Eldad and Medad were seen prophesying in the camp, and when they came, and they said to Moshe, and he was next to his wife Zipporah, saying, "There's people prophesying in the camp."
Who said there's people prophesying?
Or some reporters, I forget exactly who it was. It could be one of Moshe's children, but they said it to Moshe, and Zipporah was there, Miriam was there, and Zipporah commented, like Oivei, their wives are going to have to separate from them. Right? So when Miriam overheard Zipporah say that, she understood that she separated from her husband, her brother, Moshe.
What exactly is prophesying? What is that?
To prophesize?
Yeah.
When someone, there's different, the Rambam discusses prophecy, and there's different levels of prophecy. But either been in a dream or in a state of unconsciousness, whenever that may have been. Fine. So that's how Miriam knew that Zipporah separated from her husband. Now, when did she separate from her husband?
You say legally separated, or they just
probably just separated.
or not having marital relations? Period.
Well, I don't know. It doesn't seem like it was necessarily legal. It does seem like they separated. And the reason why I'm saying that is because if it was, if it meant other people had to know, then that would have been legal, and it seemed like no one knew. So the point is that it was just separate. Let me just say this: when the Jewish people got the Torah by Mount Sinai, it was a mitzvah for them to separate from their wives, and wives to separate from their husbands, for 3 days before they went up to Mount Sinai. Moses joined them in that, and once that happened, he stopped. Because the level stopped. He never went back to be with his wife.
Oh, okay.
So, anytime a person, meaning just like then, people were going to have a revelation, it was a scheduled revelation, so 3 days before they were separate. But with Moshe, ever since the Torah was given on Mount Sinai, I believe that was when he began to separate from his wife, is he was on a different sphere of prophecy. And therefore it was always basically on call, not like a regular prophet, always on call, could have been any time, and therefore he remained separate from his wife. This could be a whole class, by the way, because Judaism is the number one religion, and Judaism is a religion that promotes marriage, and it's not like in other religions where they disdain for marriage if a person has a level of a position of holiness, so to speak, right? Judaism is a religion that promotes it, and the whole idea of Judaism is to penetrate and affect the world, and that's expressed in marriage as well. So that's why we can have a whole class just on why Moses did separate, if it goes contrary to the agenda, but the philosophy of Judaism, which is to integrate and to emphasize and to influence the world in a most material way. So, like I said, another class. But so the point that we're getting here is that Miriam spoke negative about Moshe. Now, her intention, so that later she basically, after she heard this from Zipporah, she sent it over to her brother. Now, she said she didn't have bad intentions. She wasn't like saying something negative. Like she wasn't like emphasizing the negative about Moshe or trying to say something negative about him. She was just sharing news that she heard. She was just sharing news. She was just sharing news. So look at text 1c and let's see what we learn. Go ahead, Joyce.
Now, if Miriam, who did not intend to disparage Moses, was punished, all the more so, someone who intentionally disparages his fellow with Lashon, Hara, should be stricken with Zarat.
So Miriam had good intentions. So we should take a lesson that someone who does speak negatively for bad intentions certainly deserves the punishment that Miriam received. The point is that we should take to heart how important it is to disdain from talking negative about others. Yes?
So either whether it was good or bad, intentional or not, is still considered gossip.
Correct. We're gonna get into it, but yes. In this case, yes. So text 2. Next week's Parsha speaks again a story about gossip. What happens in next week's Parsha? The Jewish people were about to enter the land of Eretz Yisrael. This is before they were sentenced to 40 years of the desert. And Moses and the Jewish people sent 12 spies to spy out the land, to give a report of how they can attack it appropriately, to see if they can conquer, to see if it's good for them, etc. And they came back with 10 of them came back with a very negative report. And the reason why the Torah juxtaposes both stories, one after the other, this week's Parsha about Miriam, next week's Parsha about the story of the 12 tribes, the story about the 12 spies, is to teach us this lesson that look what happens when you don't learn from what you're supposed to learn from. They should have learned from what happened with Miriam. They should have taken to heart how important it is to speak positive and not negatively. And they didn't. And look what happened. Many people got punished, and we stayed in the desert for 40 years. Text 2. Go ahead, Ed.
The story of the spies was likewise juxtaposed with the story of Miriam, for they slandered the land.
Now, what's interesting, so we learned how important it is to speak positively. Now, we have a statement from Maimonides that says something extremely powerful. He quotes the sages and he says as follows, text 3, the sages said, Lashon Hara. We'll use the term Lashon Hara, and we'll use it throughout the class. It means bad language, bad tongue, loosely translated as gossip. The sages said, Lashon Hara kills 3 people. Kills 3 people. The one who speaks it, the one who listens to it, and the one who we're speaking about. Let's talk about when Lashon Hara began. When was the first time Lashon Hara was spoken? Can you guess?
Oh, probably with Hara.
That's right, the first day that man was created, Adam and Eve, Adam and Chava, and let's see. Text 4, go ahead, Elliot.
Rabbi Yehoshua de Zichrin said in the name of Rabbi Levi, the snake began to slander the Creator, saying, God ate from this tree and then created the world. So he said to you, do not eat from it, so that you will not in turn create additional worlds, for every craftsman hates his fellow craftsman. Wow.
So the snake said to Chava, don't eat from the tree of knowledge. And the reason why God told you not to eat from the tree of knowledge, the snake said, is because God doesn't want you to become God. Because that's how he became God. He became God by eating from the tree of knowledge, and he's afraid that you're going to outdo him. So he doesn't want you to eat. So so he said something false, negative about God, and that way she was enticed to take a bite, and she did. So it began with Lashon Hara. Now, there's a story told in the Chumash where Moshe Rabbeinu killed an Egyptian. We spoke about this once, where the Egyptian committed adultery with a Jewish man's wife, and this is the only incident in throughout the 210 years that the Jewish people were in Egypt that a Jewish lady was with a non-Jewish man. 210 years. And Moshe saw how this Mitzri was abusing the husband the next day, beating him with so Moshe Rabbeinu killed the Egyptian. He killed him with the word of Hashem without touching him, but miraculously killed him with the powerful name of God. And anyways, he buried him, and life went on. The next day, Moshe Rabbeinu realized that there were Jewish people who threatened him. What did they say? They said, Moshe, you're telling us that we shouldn't quarrel? Moshe saw where 2 Jews were fighting. He says, the guy stopped fighting. He says, you're going to kill us like you killed the Mitzri. So he says, And then they said to Moshe, they said, we'll go tell Pharaoh what you've done. And that's when he had to leave Egypt, and he went into Midian, and that's where he met his wife Zipporah. So he was there for many years. He left Egypt for many years, and that's when he came back was the incident that happened with the burning bush happened outside of Egypt.
And the murder went unpunished.
Well, because he was almost killed by Pharaoh, and he basically ran away. But Moshe Rabbeinu learned a big lesson from that. He learned a big lesson. He learned how he always questioned himself. Why is God putting the Jewish people through slavery? What did they ever do wrong? And when he saw this, he had some justification. He said, they speak Lashon Hara, they speak negative about someone else. Now, I don't see it so far-fetched. And we'll see soon how there was, we'll see later on, where in history there was a terrible, terrible king whose army was always successful. And this king, though he was a Jewish, terrible, horrible leader, but his army was always successful because he and his people never spoke badly about someone else. They only killed other people. They didn't speak badly about them. But other Jewish good armies did lose battles because they did have that challenge of speaking negatively, a loose lip. So let's look at these few texts. Text 5a. Go ahead, Joyce.
5a. Now it came to pass in those days that Moses grew up and went out to his brothers and looked at their burdens, and he saw an Egyptian man striking a Hebrew man of his brothers. He turned this way and that way, and he saw that there was no man. So he struck the Egyptian and hid him in the sand.
Continue, text 5b.
He went out on the second day, and behold, 2 Hebrew men were quarreling, and he said to the wicked one, "Why are you going to strike your friend?" And he retorted, "Who made you a man, a prince, and a judge over us? Do you plan to slay me as you have slain the Egyptian?" Moses became frightened and said, "Indeed, the matter has become known."
Text 5c. What does it mean the matter has become known? Now Moses' question is now answered. Now I see that the Jewish people have a loose tongue. I see why there might be some justification for what for them being here. And again, there's many layers and layers of understanding everything in Torah. We know why the Jewish people went to Egypt in a Kabbalistic way. They went to uplift and elevate what's called 288 sparks. But there's many layers. So this is one. Go, 5c.
And he said, "Indeed, the matter has become known," said Rabbi Yehuda, son of Rabbi Shalom, "in the name of the great Rabbi Hanina, and our sages in the name of Rabbi Alexandre Moshe, was wondering to himself, what sin has Israel committed that they, of all nations, deserve to be enslaved?"
So there's a story about King Shaul. King Shaul was the first king of the Jewish people. The next king would be King David. King David became an enemy. Well, King Shaul wanted to assassinate King David because he knew that he may become king, and he wanted to remain king, so he wanted to kill King David. King David ran for safety. Where did he run? He ran to the high priest, to the Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol's name was Achimelech, and Achimelech took care of him. He gave him food, he gave him water, he gave him a sword to protect himself. Now, there was someone who was a good friend of the king and an arch enemy of David. His name was Doeg. Doeg saw this episode, and he went to King Shaul and he said, "I saw David. And you know who saved his life? You know who's helping him? Achimelech, the high priest." So Shaul, out of anger and jealousy, he had all the priests assassinated. So where did this happen from? Doeg opening his big mouth. Doeg talking too negatively to King Shaul. And that got King Shaul to start. Okay, so let's read 2 texts at a time. Go ahead. 6a and 6b.
Then Doeg, Then Doeg, the Edomite, who was appointed over Saul's servants, answered and said, "I saw the son of Jesse come to Nob."
Nob is the name of the place.
"To Ahimelech, the son of Ahitub. And he inquired of God on his behalf, and gave him provisions, and gave him the sword of Goliath the Philistine."
So he gave him Goliath's sword. Continue 6b.
Every 2 time.
Yeah.
And the king said to Doeg, "You turn and fall upon the priest." And Doeg turned, and he fell upon the priest, and slew on that day 85 men, wearers of the lineage ephod.
Referring to priest, Kohanim. He killed 85 Kohanim.
And Nob, the city of the priests, he smote with the sharp edge of the sword, both man and woman, infant and suckling, and ox and ass and lamb, with the sharp edge of the sword.
So you see total irrationale, total anger, total jealousy. And where did it start? How did this, I can't say where did it start, but where did this massacre begin? With Doeg saying Lashon Hara about David. Okay, let's look at King Achav. King Achav was a horrible king who served idolatry and led his people, the Jewish people, to worship idolatry. And look what the Medrash says about King Achav, text 7.
Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, in the days of Saul and Samuel, pre-adolescent children could expound upon the Torah 49 ways to the side of purity and 49 ways to the side of impurity. Nevertheless, they would fall in battle, for they had been among them talebearers. By contrast, the generation of Ahab were all idol worshippers, yet because there were no talebearers among them, they would emerge victorious in battle, and not one of them was killed.
So you see how you have two powerful countries or two powerful armies of the Jewish people, and in one generation, though they were great Torah scholars, though they were observant Jews, talebearers. They had people amongst them that killed, that caused the death. And then you had a nasty king, but did not have talebearers, and they were successful. Now, we'll go to a famous Talmud in text 8, which Ed will read about a story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. A very interesting story about a very wealthy man who invited his friend to join his meal. So he sent his servant, and he invited his friend. His friend invited the wrong friend, an enemy, a similar name, because the names were confusing. One was Kamsa, the other one was son of Kamsa, Bar Kamsa. And he invited the wrong one. And let's see what happened after the enemy showed up at his party.
On account of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, the holy temple was destroyed. There was a certain man whose friend was called Kamsa, while his enemy was called Bar Kamsa. The man made a feast and told his servant to invite Kamsa. Instead, the servant invited Bar Kamsa. When the host found Bar Kamsa sitting at the feast, he said to him, "You are my enemy. What are you doing here? Get up and leave." Bar Kamsa replied, "Since I've already come, please allow me to remain, and I will pay you the worth of what I eat and drink." The host refused. Bar Kamsa said, "I will pay for half of the entire feast." The host refused. Bar Kamsa said, "I will pay for the entire feast." The host refused and bodily threw him out. Said Bar Kamsa, "The rabbis were present, yet they did not protest this behavior. Evidently they approved. I will slander them to Caesar in his palace."
So that's what happened. You had a man whose name was Bar Kamsa, invited to the wrong party, went and asked, "Can I stay?" And the man said no. And when he was thrown out of the party, he said, "Okay, rabbis were there. They didn't object. They're okay with it. I'll take revenge." So what did he do? He went to the Caesar and he said, "Caesar, the Jews don't like non-Jews. Try to send an offering to their temple, and they will not take it." And he sent a beautiful kosher animal to the temple, and they gladly would have taken it if Bar Kamsa wouldn't have bruised it inappropriately to make it unfit for a sacrifice. And when it was refused and they didn't take it, then Caesar saw that the man was saying the truth, that the Jewish people don't like him. They don't like non-Jews. So he destroyed the holy temple. And that again is from someone saying Lashon Hara. So now let's look at a halachic overview. Now there's a book that speaks solely about Lashon Hara, written by the Chafetz Chaim, just the laws of what you're not allowed to speak, and when you are, how to speak it. We're not going to read the whole book, but we'll read certain parts of it, and we'll look a little bit about the approach to speaking and not speaking Lashon Hara. Text 9a and 9b, Elliot, go ahead. This, we're quoting now by Yikra Leviticus, which is the Bible, a quote from the Bible, which is the source of the following. Go ahead, of Lashon Hara.
You shall not go around as a gossip monger amidst your people. You shall not stand by the shedding of your fellow's blood. I am Hashem.
Wow. So in one sentence it says, don't be a gossip monger and don't stand idle by the shedding of your blood, of your fellow's blood, though they may have separate things to do. They're in the same verse, so they're obviously related. We're not going to get into that now, but 9b, go ahead. What is a gossip monger? Go ahead.
Who is a gossiper? One who collects information and that goes from person to person saying, this is what so-and-so said. This is what I heard about so-and-so. Even if the statements are true, they bring about the destruction of the world.
They bring about the destruction of the world. Now it could be, this doesn't say anything about saying negative. Just sharing information. What's his name? Got a new car. Just information, just to share. And this, a gossiper, someone who does it regularly, says to this guy, this continues speaking about people. Let's look at text 10, a quote from the Shulchan Aruch about Lashon Hara. Go ahead.
Included in this prohibition is Lashon Hara, which is when a person talks ill of another, although he is speaking the truth. Even if one said, where is it always light, if not in the home of so-and-so, who always has meat and fish? Who always has meat and fish? This is Lashon Hara if expressed in a way that would portray the victim negatively, as though he were a glutton.
So let's say if you guys are in Texas and they all have a good friend in California and they're making a barbecue and they realize they have 15 friends over at the barbecue and they only have 14 steaks. So okay, they figure out how to do it, but then one of them says, we can ask Joey. Sure, he has an extra steak. And everyone laughs because Joey is known to have a lot of meat in his house. That is Lashon Hara. He's a friend of yours, but you're making a negative comment about him. You're saying something negative about him. You're having a laugh about something which is right. You're saying, even though it may not be negative, the guy has meat, but you're making him look like he's a fresser. So that's Lashon Hara. It's true. It's not necessarily negative. Even just a little negative, it's still a Lashon Hara. Now, go ahead, text 11.
The prohibition of speaking Lashon Hara applies even if the speaker does not specify who he is speaking about. But from the story, the listener can surmise who is being spoken of. Furthermore, even if the story told is not negative, but through it some harm or shame will befall the victim, and this was the speaker's intent, this too falls in the category of Lashon Hara. This was called covert Lashon Hara by the sages.
Yeah.
Covert.
Okay, so what happens if you're part of an audience? Someone's telling you Lashon Hara. What do you do? They're not allowed to say it. Are you allowed to hear it? Go ahead, text 12a and 12b.
It is biblically forbidden to listen to Lashon Hara spoken about another person. We may not believe in our hearts that the story is true, because if we do, the victim will be disgraced in our eyes. Our sages further stated that the punishment of one who listens to it is worse than the one who speaks it.
Yeah, so you're not allowed to believe it. Someone tells you something, you're not allowed to believe it. Now, we're going to be speaking about soon when it's important to share negative information about someone else. But when someone's sharing with you something which is not in that category, when it's supposed to be said, and we'll give an example soon where if someone is dishonest in business, then you're going to tell your friend, I saw you speak to that guy, do not do business with him, he'll steal your money. Now, it's not Lashon Hara to tell your friend don't deal with this guy because he steals money, and he might steal yours. If someone is an abuser and he's getting married to your sister, or to your sister's best friend, or your sister's friend, or your sister's whatever, you say, buddy, this guy, he's an abuser. You shouldn't, sharing that information to a stranger on the plane that doesn't know the guy, or you're just sharing a name, that's Lashon Hara. But sharing with someone who it matters to may not be, and actually may be important to share. So when you hear something which is not something which you have to hear, we're not supposed to believe it. Fine. Text 12b.
Even to merely hear Lashon Hara is biblically forbidden. Even if it's not one's intention to believe the gossip, he is liable for bending his ears to listen.
Good. Text 13.
What is considered havach Lashon Hara? If someone says, who could imagine that so-and-so is where he is today? Or if someone says, don't speak about so-and-so, I don't want to hear about him, and so on. Similarly, anyone who praises someone before his enemy, or before a large crowd in which it is possible that one of his enemies is present, this is havach Lashon Hara, which causes the enemy to speak ill of the victim.
So havach Lashon Hara is something which leads to Lashon Hara. So if someone says, don't speak about Fred. I don't want to hear anything about him. Don't tell me anything about Fred. He says, why not? He said, I don't want to get into it. No, tell me. He says, 14 years ago, Fred, and then the story starts. Right? So don't talk, don't say, I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear about this guy. Because once you say that, that's going to lead in to Lashon Hara. Don't either say to someone who you know doesn't like the person you're speaking about, oh, I went to this thing, and boy was he good. Boy was she good. Don't say that in front of an enemy. Because then they say, well, they might know how to build a house, but the guy you can't trust a word he says. He says this price and that, he does this wrong and that wrong, so don't speak positive about someone in front of an enemy. And this you see all the time. If someone goes home to speak about a comedy show that they went to, and the comedian is liked by the person you're speaking about, so you like to say, I went to the show and he was amazing. He was absolutely amazing. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. You're speaking positive about someone else. Positive about someone else is good. Do not speak, till now we have not mentioned the idea of speaking positive about someone else. We're speaking about neutral or negative. Now we're speaking, saying, there's a time where you should not speak positive about someone else. And that is in front of the enemy. Why? Because though what you're saying is just and beautiful and wonderful, it's going to lead to Lashon Hara. Therefore it's called the dust of Lashon Hara. It's the beginning. You're giving
the enemy some
exactly. So this class, by the way, there's a lot of no's and then there's some yeses. We're going to speak less about the yes than the no's, because of course we need more guidance on the no's than the yes. Though both we need to really know what to do. We really need to read the book and read more about it, more Torah. Okay. Text 14a, go ahead, Elliot. We'll read some exceptions to this rule.
A person may relate certain matters to others to help the victim and to condemn a wrongful deeds. In a situation where he saw the person wrong his fellow man, for example, he robbed, cheated, or damaged someone, whether or not the victim is aware, or he knows that this person embarrassed or verbally harassed someone. He knows for certain that the perpetrator did not return the stolen goods or reimburse the victim for the damage done, or did not seek forgiveness for his transgression. One is allowed to relate these matters to someone else, even if this was witnessed in private. However, be careful that these 7 conditions, delineated below, are met.
Some conditions are, go ahead.
Some conditions are He must be very careful not to immediately assume guilt, but rather carefully consider the matter objectively to determine if the presumed wrongful deed is in fact halakhically wrong before speaking about it. His intention must be to remedy the situation and not, God forbid, Hashem forbid, to benefit from the condemnation, nor may he speak out of existing hatred.
So that's Elliot mentioned. You know that even when you do speak something which is good, which you're allowed to speak, that you should not say out of hatred. So there are times that you're allowed to speak, but it shouldn't be out of hatred.
Mm-hmm.
So, if there's I'm not even going to say this, I'm not even getting political. Anyways.
Oh, no, go ahead.
See? There's a story told about a great guy who had a terrible problem. His problem was, we know how he's a great guy. He's just a great guy, I'm saying. But his problem was that he had a loose lip and he used to speak badly about many people. There was an incident where he spoke badly about someone and it totally ruined his reputation. Went around town like fire and it totally ruined his reputation.
Ruined the other person.
The one he spoke about. And this person, the victim, went to the rabbi and he said, I don't know what to do. The uncle spoke negatively about me and I lost my job and I don't know what to do with my kids and that. So he called over this individual, this gossiper, and he said to him, he said, do you have pillows at home? He said, sure. He says, you have a feather pillow. He said, of course. I'm a wealthy man, of course I have a feather pillow. He says, do you mind bringing me one? Sure. He brings one. He says, that's all you want? That's all you wanted from me? He says, no, do you mind opening it? Opening it. He says, I should open it, it's going to make it a mess in your office. He said, yeah, open it. The windows were open, he opens the pillow, and the feathers go everywhere. Some stay in the office, some go out. And after that he says, I'm confused. So the rabbi says, do me a favor now, can you gather all the feathers, put it back in the pillow? He says, Rabbi, that's ridiculous. I'm saying, maybe I can get all the feathers in this room, but the ones that went out the side, they're out, they're just out. There's no way of getting them back. So the rabbi said to him, well, this is what you did to this man's reputation. Even if you tried, you wouldn't be able to fix it. So he said, what should I do? You're right. I ruined his reputation and I can't fix it. He said, teach yourself to abstain from Lashon Hara. Don't let yourself talk negatively about Lashon Hara. And the man changed his life and he became someone who had a zipper on his lips. From this episode, the rabbi taught him a very important lesson. That this is harm. It's not like if you steal, you can give the money back. This is something which people hear and it hurts. It really hurts. Let's look at text 15 and 16 where we see some other methods of helping this challenge. Text 15. Therefore, my beloved and dear ones, I beg again and again. This is a letter that the first Chabad Rebbe sent to his community. I beg again and again that each of you exert himself with all his heart and soul to firmly implant in his heart a love for his fellow. And in the words of Scripture, let none of you consider in your heart what is evil for his fellow. Moreover, such a consideration should never arise in one's heart in the first place. And if it does arise, one should push it away from his heart, as smoke is driven away, as if it were an actual idolatrous thought. For to speak evil of another is as grave as idolatry and incest and bloodshed. And if this be so with speech, then surely thinking evil about another is even worse. For all the wise of heart are aware of the great impact on the soul of thought over speech. So here, he's writing to people who we know care about a relationship with God, care about a relationship with a fellow. He said, instill in your heart love for everyone. Love for everyone. And you should know that when we do speak negatively, the Torah in the Talmud says it's even worse than idolatry, incest, and bloodshed. Obviously, to a degree, it's worse. And then he says something which is powerful. He says, a person has 3 faculties: thought, speech, and action. 3 ways of expression. If you're not allowed to talk negatively, and that's so harmful, and intellect or thought is a more sensitive tool that you have than speech is, then think how harmful thinking negative about someone else is. Thinking negative about someone else can harm you. It's harming a delicate thing, your mind. Text 16, very, very interesting text. Let's see it. Who would like to read the final text? Go ahead.
I'll read it, but you got the book.
Go ahead, Joyce, go ahead.
We have a tradition attributed to the Baal Shem Tov. When one hears an uncomplimentary report about another Jew, even if he does not know the individual referred to, he should be very deeply pained, for one of these two is certainly in the wrong. If what they are saying about the individual is true, then he is defective. And if it is not true, then the talebearer is in an unhealthy situation.
So if you write, this is unbelievable, you hear something negative, you heard it already. It's done, you heard it. So you have to be saddened. Because if what you've heard is true, that's terrible. And if it's not true, then the one who said it is in a serious, negative, unhealthy situation. It's interesting the way in Hebrew, Mamatzav loy toiv. It's like he's in an unhealthy place. Very powerful. So in this class, what we spoke about is stories about Miriam. This week's parsha, we spoke about Moshe. We spoke about, let's go back. Miriam speaking negatively about Moshe. Therefore, and that's how she got punished with the tzaras. Then we spoke about other stories that happened in Lashon Hara with Adam, Eve, Chava, the snake, Adam and Eve, and the snake. We spoke about Shaul, King David, or King Shaul, David, Achimelech, and Doeg, where Doeg slandered about King David. We spoke about the King Achav, who was an idolater, and he led his people in idolatry, and they were successful a lot more because they did not have talebearers among them. However, Jewish kings, that he was Jewish, but righteous kings had communities there were periods and generations where the Jewish people were strong with Judaism and observant with the Torah and mitzvot, but they did have this negative problem. We spoke about the halachic premise and different ideas about Lashon Hara, even speaking neutral or speaking even if it for no reason. We spoke about Lashon Hara or chilos, gossip, speaking negatively. We mentioned times that it's allowed, that you're allowed and supposed to speak negative about others. But for more on this, we have to read more on this topic, and we could, but that's not what we just did as a general overview. And we spoke about ways to be above this. Two ways to be above this is totally to shut your mouth, or to instill in your heart love for every person and not even let our minds think negative about others. So there's a hard task, but if God gave us this mitzvah, then obviously we have the power to do it. So l'chaim, l'chaim. Any questions?